right, GM. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and a good night to everybody who is tuning in.
Space for a very long time. I think I'm a computer scientist and started Gnosis together with my co-founder Martin back in 2015. So it's over a decade at this point. And we did it as part of Consensus with the goal of building prediction markets. And eventually, we had to build a lot of core infrastructure in order to just enable prediction markets, including wallet infrastructure and exchange infrastructure, which ultimately led to the projects of Safe and CowSwap.
With Web3, it's not gonna lie, it was the very, very early DeFi or even ICO mania that happened in 2017. I still recall back in the day learning about Gnosis ICO, so that was quite nice that it's come full circle today. But I'll say very quickly, the wallets and payments use case, the stablecoin use case caught my attention when I put on more like my builder hat on. Because fun fact was I used to run a software agency back in the early days, had a bunch of remote team members, and it was using stablecoins to pay them at one point. So that was where I think my aha moment of really appreciating things being on chain came true. Yeah, and I think that moment just stuck on ever since. So ever since then, so now I'm doing headquarters. Context is really because I think the idea seeded actually a few years back, even formally starting headquarters, because I really started observing how DeFi projects, everyone's building all this so-called future of finance stuff, right, for us as consumers to enjoy. But when I started befriending, I think, the projects, I started noticing that actually a lot of these DeFi projects, they were forced to use your regular like centralized finance options to run their projects, especially when they wanted to run it properly like a business. It was very tough for them to even open up like a business bank account or even a business neobank actually back in the day. Yeah, so that prompted me to really start headquarters because I found it ironic, that DeFi projects were actually built on highly centralized or fiat-based FinOps stack. So the goal of headquarters is basically the name that describes headquarters. That's why we are called that. It's really to bring in all the payment stuff, even reporting actually, things that you need to run like an actual business, just that now we are bringing it on chain. Yeah, fun fact about HQ, when Sunny and I first started, that was like maybe 2022. We did joke with some of our investors that we give ourselves a maximum of 3 years for our category of stable coins, and not just stable coins, but stable coins for business payments to be the category, the hotcakes, right? To be really mature, and a lot of good players will start to come into the industry. True enough, we saw that a lot of crazy big acquisitions have also happened along the way. So I would say that for us, when we kind of cross paths with Gnosis, especially with Gnosis' strong history in the building infrastructure, including big players like Safe, for example, to us it was almost a no-brainer to combine forces to bring forward what we had in mind for HQ, but at a much bigger scale, but more importantly at a quicker pace. Yeah, because we really find that this year, starting this year, stable coins, even maybe sometimes to the point of self-custody finance, this is the year that we will finally see small businesses, even outside of crypto, being receptive towards this, right? And we really see it. Your regular fintechs, sometimes even banks now being all over stable coins. So I'm glad that actually us moving forward with Gnosis actually happened in time. So that we can really tackle worldwide at a bigger scale. Yeah, it was definitely interesting. When we brought home this news, to our investors, they were kind of taken off guard because to give context, headquarters, while our clientele, it's native Web3 businesses. Actually, most of our entire corporate setup is more like a fintech. We don't have a token. We actually raise funds on a regular equity-based financing. So our whole setup was very equity-based, whereas for Gnosis, there is the Gnosis DAO as well. So I think one biggest unique factor was before even the deal got inked and confirmed on the legal front, we had to go through the DAO governance process. So it was quite an eye-opening experience to prepare the proposal. We even had like a DAO town hall that anyone from the DAO could actually ask questions before we actually sent it out for voting. So it was quite fascinating because most of the time acquisitions are on a hush-hush. You don't really involve the public stakeholders or shareholders at all. Only maybe the corporate development and management team knows what's going on. Whereas for ours, it was out in the open before the deal was inked. Like it had to be out in the open before the deal was inked. So I think for us as founders, it needed some sort of appreciation for that process to be willing to do this. And I think maybe it was a test for our culture fit as well, maybe to see whether we'd be a good fit and ready for the Gnosis DAO experience. But yeah, so I think that's one biggest experience. Yeah, that's very, very unique about this.
Yeah. So it was definitely an interesting experience. Maybe as a context, so we decided, like Gnosis has been started also as a for-profit company based in Gibraltar, and this for-profit company held most of the funds. And then a couple of years ago, we decided that this is not exactly how we would like to run Gnosis. What we actually envision is there should be more transparency and there should be more clear like ownership of Gnosis among the token holders. For us, it was always clear the value capture of Gnosis is in the GNO token that was also sold via the ICO back in the day. And that's why we decided we are moving most of the funds into a DAO, into Gnosis DAO. And those also make it very clear that, okay, this is governed by GNO token holders. And we also defined how the governance process should look like in order to make proposals and execute things from the DAO. And like this then obviously also requires, if we do like a larger transaction, like the acquisition of HQ, to go through this process. And I think we have all learned a lot in this process as well. And there's of course always kind of like in this kind of process, there's a fine line, like how much do you, like you cannot discuss everything within like the DAO, like from start to finish, simply because there are a lot of nuances. There has to be some sort of preparation before you even go to the DAO. However, I think it's very important to also generally involve people early on so they become aware of the opportunity and it doesn't feel like it's just something that has to be signed off on. I think that was an interesting experience, which also took us then a couple of iterations. But I think it helped a lot to align everyone. And I think the big upside I see is that obviously now there's a much better understanding among every GNO token holder. Okay, what is HQ? How does it? How can it help Gnosis to grow? And everyone who is GNO token holder is now also standing behind this and is helping to accelerate it. And I think that is that's also a big opportunity.
What we have is an invoicing feature. So you will be able to issue invoices and get it settled, whether it's on stables or fiat. So we are working on that, and I think that has been a big request from users. A couple of protocols have asked for that as well. So yes, so that is the most requested. High impact, I think cards will probably be one of those, right? Like if you think about how teams have been operating prior to teams shipping card solutions, we would have to off-ramp it and then put it into a bank account if we had a bank account. And then keeping track of these finances would just be all over the place, maybe on an Excel spreadsheet and so on. So I think we're still optimistic that like cards would likely be like one of the highest used features on GnosisHQ. And following that, we believe that like off-ramps but off-ramps within particular use cases, right? So off-ramps for payroll, off-ramps for invoices will likely end up becoming one of the main things that we will see users using.
Regarding stablecoins, there's the obvious like big stablecoins like USDC, USDT, like the big US dollar based stablecoins. But what is actually quite interesting if you want to enable payments is to have local stablecoins. And I think it's still very early, but we see there are more and more local stablecoins popping up. Again, I mentioned we work with Monerium on EuroE. This is their local euro-based stablecoin, and with another party in Brazil building a BRL-based stablecoin. And ultimately, if you really want to make payments work, then the local population, they want to still pay with their own currency. It's not going to be US dollars. I think US dollars are seen as kind of a hedge to kind of de-risk exposure to purely your own local currency, but it is certainly it is not what is used for daily payments. So if you really want to enable a payment network, then we have to integrate into all of those local payment rails and have local stablecoins. And that's what we do right now. We look into all kind of interesting markets for us, specifically also in Asia and Latin America, where are the providers of local stablecoins? Do they fulfill our criteria to be listed on Gnosis? How do people on and off ramp to those? Many of these stablecoin providers, they also build their own on off ramps, which then make it very easy and also very cost efficient for users to be onboarded, which obviously is very important to not have like a high, let's say, entrance fee to your own system. And that's what we have, for example, with Euro and also BRL, where users have no fees at all. And in fact, today, no matter where you would come from, if you would like to actually off-ramp to any kind of European bank account, then the best way for everyone would be Monerium, because on-chain liquidity is very high and it would outperform every kind of centralized exchange. So you can kind of think as like we basically build the core integrations to all the local stablecoin rails, which effectively make it not necessary anymore to go via any centralized exchange. So that's what we do on the stablecoin side. And then on the yield side, of course, there are already like many yield products which are interesting. Like for example, GnosisChain has natively integrated SDAI, which is the yield-bearing stablecoin provided by MakerDAO, or now called Sky. Then we have yields available for local stablecoins on our money market powered by Aave. So for example, right now, you can earn over 3% on euros, which you are depositing into the money market. On SDAI, you get something like 5.5%. And yeah, so for whatever we want to onboard, we will, of course, enable also nice yield opportunities. For many, it will be through money markets. For others, it will be through like direct opportunities into treasury bills. So for example, for BL, there's also the opportunity to just effectively have a yield-bearing version of this, which exposes you to treasury bills by the Central Bank of Brazil. And they give you a lot of yield right now. They give you something like, I think, 12%. And all of those opportunities will also become on-chain available.
One, I think in general, Asia's economy is just booming. So when it comes to payments, it's about money movement. If there's more money in demand, there's more money to move. So that in itself is great for us. So I would say in general, Asia is just booming. Southeast Asia is, other maybe parts of Asia as well. So in general, we're just riding the tide there as well. But when it comes to on-chain payments specifically, I would say that because Asia economies are fairly young compared to other maybe economies, I have noticed that in terms of tech adoption, we are a bit more forward. Merchants are a bit more willing to experiment or accept different payment methods, putting aside, of course, whether regulations ban them sometimes. But if you don't have that, sometimes merchants are willing to experiment things. So case in point, for example, in Singapore, like where headquarters is headquartered at, fun fact, you can actually pay your government taxes using stablecoins as well. Not many people know that outside of Singapore, but that's actually live. It's been already live for a year. And that's just mind-blowing, right? That the government here works with a fintech ecosystem to even explore stablecoins to pay your taxes. So that's crazy. So I would say that not just Singapore, but other parts of Asia is starting to be experimental. Sometimes starting with at least just a pilot, but at least that's a start. Yeah, so I think that's the advantage we have here. We definitely looking at pilots happening in Asia. So maybe look out for certain stuff within a month or at least most 1 year to come.
We have seen, of course, a lot has been built over the last decade, especially around DeFi. And my feeling is we have sufficiently created infrastructure for DeFi at this point. What is, I think, kind of adjacent to that is, yes, we need more. I mentioned like local stablecoins. There are a few, but they're not enough. And I think there's also the opportunity to build much better integrations into the existing transactional systems. And of course, there's the big players. They have already mentioned here, but they are focusing on, like, of course, the largest markets, specifically around the US. But there's more than this, and I think there's a big opportunity to just to try to be first and build great infrastructure for many other places. So I would say yes, focus on building better integrations into existing transactional systems, building local stablecoins, I think one very important, very important field is also simply thinking about distribution. And I think on-chain, we have been innovating on this quite a bit, I don't know, through airdrops and whatever not, but these have been traditionally very costly. Like I would say the acquisition cost for users were very high. Thinking about how you can innovate in this field, I think would be also something that could be very worthwhile. Because ultimately, I think we have to, we have to build a system that is out-competing what is out there. I think it's absolutely possible, especially looking at the horrendous fees which are charged in many of those systems. But we also have to make sure that users are coming, and then we have to create nice incentives and ways how we can distribute what we have. And this is, I think, ultimately the biggest challenge. How can you create a system that has enough adoption to kind of have this escape velocity where you can even take on the really large players and replace those systems ultimately?
I think come to that point, we are working together to really make sure that if there are teams out there looking to build, then HQ, GnosisHQ, and the Gnosis family will be there to support you. We'll be there to guide you, and I think so that's the alpha from me. I feel like that's the biggest alpha I can give.
Until next time, Sharon, Stefan, Sunny, I appreciate you. If there's anything that you guys would like to say, now's the time, and then it will conclude from there. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you for tuning in.